Okay, everyone. Thank you for coming today. This is a part of our continuous presentations on Heritage Restoration Initiative. So we will invite a scholar to have a very detailed interactive kind of session. So previously we have sessions on applications of AI, heritage, and also we have seen we have a session from a historian who talked to us about a traveler's account in the 19th century about many of the sites which we work on. Today we're having Dr. Antarin Chakrabarty. He's an urban and regional planner, geospatial analyst, and also an open source software enthusiast. His encounter with Makale started when he met staff from Makale University called Mezanet Sori in Norway while they were studying at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, or NTNU. Later, Antarin joined the faculty at Makale University, where he worked as an assistant professor at the School of Architecture and Urban Planning, where he has taught several classes and advised students, and also engaged in several community activities. He also worked as a state team lead with the Department of Housing and Urban Development in the government of Odisha for the planning and implementation of the Odisha Livable Habitat Mission, or known as Jaga Mission. This is one of the largest slum land titling and upgrading initiatives in the world. Before that, he also worked with GIZ India for the development of digital and geospatial tools for participatory planning. So he is a well-seasoned expert on the subjects, and also he also knows the study area very well. I look forward to his lecture, and I immediately invite him to continue with it. To you, Antarin, please. Would you like to share the slide? You can start.
Probably it's important to consider the way I put it in the topic, and I will explain why. And I do expect that some may agree and many may also disagree. But the whole point is to have, that is probably the whole point of a genuinely interdisciplinary approach to any subject, whether heritage or planning or regional science, whatever. So I'll just share my screen and let me know if the screen share is working. Personally, actually, I am fond of neither Zoom nor PowerPoint presentations. So I'd like to show the thing directly, whatever is happening directly, and work on the things while I'm talking on them. But it's some of the slides are there. So what I will do is, one second. That's another problem when you can't. Slideshow. Is this visible, this slide? Is it?
Yes, we can see it.
Yeah. So what I will do is, maybe I will minimize this part. And Alula, I would request you to just give me a bell when it is like 15 minutes or something, so I know how to cut it in half. I will say a few words on the topic that I selected. And I will begin with, I have many memories of Ethiopia, of course, and I'm a person who is fond of nostalgia by nature. So I have a huge collection of photographs and memories and things. But I will start with a particular event which was very interesting. This was a presentation I was making at the sixth Ethiopian National Urban Forum in Dire Dawa in the November of 2014. And I was talking about both the remarkable achievements of Ethiopia under the previous government, and also some of the things based on theory, based on planning theory and theory of geography, the political geography that which I felt where could be threats or challenges. And after the presentation, one lady from the audience who was an Ethiopian government employee, the majority of the audience, they were government employees. And she said very confidently, and I love the way she said it also, that Ethiopia is immune to the forces of neoliberalism. And that was 2014, and we know that it was in 2014 itself that the first trouble with the Addis Ababa master plan began. And after which the government withdrew that master plan in 2016. But it was kind of telling and interesting that one of the first symptoms and one of the first trigger causes, but the triggers was related to an urban plan and the regional dimensions of an urban plan, because the difficulty was that there was allegation that this plan was acquiring land from within the Oromo region, which they had no entitlement to. Now, I was, of course, basing my presentation on a theoretical formulation of the Marxist geographer David Harvey, who had written in one of his texts once that it is by no means clear that even the most progressive governments can resist social polarization when embedded in the logic of capitalist spatial development. And this fundamental political trouble of neoliberal development. So it's a situation where it can objectively make life difficult for any government. If it is a kind of government which is an oppressive government, that's one story. But even if it is a progressive government, it is also often a victim of similar kind of forces and faces similar wrath of the people and similar unpopular resentment, which actually does not deserve at all because of the priorities and the policies and the approaches that it has taken. Now, that itself is a big subject, so I will not go very deep into it. Suffice to say that war, and of course, what we are discussing, anytime we are discussing now, although heritage is a big subject, but we are fundamentally connected with the issue of war, the war that happened, the consequences of that war, and what it means in the larger historic sense. And war has regional triggers, and our regions are essentially complex systems. Now, there are big leaps in these different sentences, so I will ask you to bear with me because it's only because I have to cover a lot of ground in 30 minutes. Now, what it made me feel, even when this tragic thing was going on in Ethiopia and I was here, that there is really no sustainable protection of heritage as long as possibility of kinetic warfare remains. And I know there have been some questions and very credible questions raised regarding the use of the word post-conflict in this, but probably it was not correct to use post-conflict because it kind of gives a sense that conflict is over and now we're in the post-conflict. No, actually not. What I meant particularly was the secession of direct and intense kinetic warfare, when actual warfare, actual shooting is going on. But of course, we very well know that things are far from complete normal. Now, so one of the things now this is funny. 1 second. Yeah, one of the arguments based on that, which is kind of an argument I basically gave to myself, and now I'm just thinking aloud, which is so that I can get feedback from others and see whether any kind of thing is helpful to others or not. It is not at all to say that this is some sort of a conclusion or anything of the sort. Now, based on understanding that war has regional triggers and what we said in the last slide, So I felt that an approach to sustainable protection of heritage must simultaneously be an approach that can address the primary threat to that heritage. If it is related to the threat of kinetic warfare, which itself has regional triggers, for example, objective forces that cause socioeconomic and spatial inequality, then an approach to tackle heritage protection must also have the ability to address the challenge of regions as complex systems. And although it sounds like a simple sentence was written below, it was actually a result of a long period of work in Chile's socialist government by system scientist Stafford Beer. He was advisor to President Salvador Allende, who had said that dissolving a problem is better than solving it. I mean, the task of any planner should definitely be to be able to anticipate problems and rather than having to deal with the problem as it comes. Now, let's say, now we delve a little bit into some of the technical aspects of what is being suggested here. Now, we start with a simple definition of a system. Now, a system is generally understood as a set of interconnected and interacting parts that make up a complex whole. And authors and planning theorists Morrison and Smith had one written, what is the advantage of such an approach? Because since reality is inherently integrated and interacting, so the systems approach offers an integrating framework for analysis at a number of levels, from highly aggregated to finely disaggregated, and which basically ensures that issues are not considered in isolation. Now, of course, this is very tempting. We all struggle with the issue of not having to consider issues in isolation. And even within the field of heritage conservation, there has been a move when, rather than considering a particular artifact in isolation, but rather to see that artifact within its socioeconomic, geographical, and historical context. So, of course, the importance of seeing things in context is crucial. And along with that is also important to see how things interact with each other. Now, the question is, it is, of course, very interesting, but how does one do it? How does one actually operationalize something like that? Now, urban and regional systems are, of course, extremely complex systems. And by the nature of extremely complex systems mean that they are generally counterintuitive. They also give generally counterintuitive signals almost. If, I mean, one can almost see, as it also happened in case of most countries, in many regions, is that a sudden tragic turn happens precisely at the time when things seem to be going pretty well. When a government thinks that it has a good overview of things, it is actually doing things for the benefit of the people, and then suddenly it's sometimes faced with an overwhelming conflict scenario. And then of course, once that conflict scenario manifests itself, then everything happens which is around that, what's going on, what's happening. And so there is no more time. And also there is a lot in the fog of war, which when people are not able to understand that, how on earth could something come to pass? I mean, when I was in Ethiopia in 2012 and 2013, and compared to, let's say, India, I found Ethiopia in every way fascinating. That a university and with like thousands of students, my own students came from different regions of Ethiopia. Yeah, and there is some sense of difference, some sense of thing, but nothing that could suggest that one can, reach a level of actual kinetic war. So socioeconomic processes as manifested in regional systems are complex, and they have an effect on various kind of things. Now, in activating any systems approach to understanding or solving or resolving anything, especially social systems, we need data. And we need generally substantial amounts of relevant data. In fact, the line here is what I wrote is attempt to model the behavior of any system, let's say urban and regional system and whatever it contains, requires the processing of substantial amounts of relevant data. And the stress is on the word processing, because we very well know that as digital technologies and computers and everything become very accessible and very available, the prevalent tendency is more of an accumulation of all kinds of data rather than the accumulation of relevant kind of data, particularly for the process of, for the requirement of processing. And it is here that the role of computer becomes evident to all fields of social science. Now, Thomas de la Barra, who is another planner and regional scientist, had said that if one has to use, now I'm jumping very quickly from the systems approach to the data that it requires, because it will connect with some of the activities that are going on in Tigray now, which Alula is also involved with, and we have also often discussed, which involves the recording of data of heritage sites that have faced different kinds of damage, which have been affected by the war, the challenges of conserving them, restoring them. But so fundamentally, and there are different approaches taken for that. The issue, of course, is that often we are unclear as to how to best approach this complex problem in an effective way. So let's say Labara says something that once data has been stored conveniently, many different types of analysis become possible, from simple statistics to complex numerical analysis. In the case of urban and regional studies, the possibility of building large data banks with spatial referencing enables a kind of analysis that would be impossible without a computer. He was referring to the computer. And so essentially the important thing here becomes that if we have relevant data in sufficient quantity and stored conveniently, which is a very important thing, most of the time it is not, and which have spatial referencing, it becomes increasingly important for us to understand not just what the things are, but where are they with respect to each other in the larger geography. And there's another very vital line which is fundamental in operationalizing a systems approach to solving or to addressing any kind of planning challenge, inclusive of heritage management. The data should be maintained at the lowest possible level of disaggregation and then readily aggregated as the need arises. Now, I cannot stress enough the importance of this statement, because a huge amount of avoidable conflict in human social relations arise out of information that is aggregated to the point that nuances of the realities get lost. And the only way then remaining of tracking those nuances is to operate at a very local and at a very qualitative level, which gives a lot of depth of understanding of what are the real issues going on. But of course, that again faces problem when it has to be processed and aggregated and combined to reach successful decision making. Now, also there is in the use of digital technology the danger of what is now called digital escapism, or what I call digital defeatism. Now, the purpose of using digital data to apply a combined systems approach to regional planning and heritage conservation is not to accumulate data and to document heritage because nothing else can be done. Documenting and accumulating the information are extremely important in their own rights. I mean, a scanning of ancient texts, it's been going on, recording on microfilms, this has been going on for a very long time, and they are very vital, very important. But it should not be done because nothing else can be done. The purpose instead is to collect that data which enhances our ability to identify issues and interlinkages at any level. Let's say a macro level, at the level of a city or region, or a micro level to the level of an individual site or building. And therefore our abilities of analysis, prediction, and planning to be enhanced. The purpose of the digital is to enhance our ability to handle the real, not to escape it. So, for example, there has been, Alula is also familiar, that a lot of photogrammetric research of documenting in 3 dimension the sites and the damage and things. Important as it is more important to see what role that data is playing in the ability to preserve and protect that heritage and study its interaction with reality in the real world, in the real thing. The danger often happens that if enough such digital material gets accumulated, then that starts taking a reality of its own, and that data set is, of course, talks of a heritage of Ethiopia, but it is inherently placeless and materialless. Now, what I will do now is spend the remaining time in giving an example of a project that I was myself involved with in India, and then I will shift base to Tigray and talk about how digital data and geospatial analysis was used in activating a systems approach, although it was a completely different context, but it was dealing with something which has commonalities, in the sense that it was a project, this Jaga mission was a project to give individual land rights to all slum dwellers in the region of, I will now, oh my God, what's this? Yeah. So what I prefer to do is I would prefer to show you the reality. So let's say this is the map of India, as we can be, we are kind of generally familiar. And there is a region, just like Tigray is a region of Ethiopia, there's a region called Odisha. And the government, Odisha has an area of about 155,000 square kilometers. So it's approximately, I would say, 2.5 times the size of Tigray, probably. And the government there had decided that it is going to give land rights and upgrade shelters of vulnerable people, basically people living in slum settlements in the cities. But it will do it across all the 115 cities of the region. And what it ended up doing in order to operationalize this process was that it created, please don't mind if I don't always make a full screen, because I'll be jumping screens. So it created, we were involved in that project, and some of my colleagues are also actually listening, who were involved in that project. They are among the audience today. I think Bibhu is here and Ankita are there. So we created a geospatial data set of about 3,000 slums in 115 cities. And this was done using drone imagery, but the purpose of drone imagery was to create scaled and georeferenced ultra-high resolution maps, which could be turned into GIS data sets, and which could contain all the statistical information of the households, which were simultaneously collected using household surveys. Now, an important thing here was the speed of data collection, which modern technology actually allows. The first 2,000 slums were mapped and surveyed in a period of 6 months, which translates to an average rate of approximately 83 slum settlements per week. The reason I'm stressing the element of speed is that in any aspect of data collection, there has to be some sort of relationship between the speed of collecting data of a particular reality and the rate at which that reality itself will be taken. If data collection takes too long a time, then the reality of which the data is being collected will itself start changing too much. Now, if we see here, we can get a sense of the geography, because these black dots are the various cities. And when you have to cover all cities in a 155,000 square kilometer thing, it's quite a formidable logistical challenge. But if you can manage to complete that data building process, then you can get full advantage of what Paulikos Prastakos was writing, that data can be maintained at the lowest possible level, which means you can go down to the level of the absolute detail of a single site and see what's going on there, and be able to move upwards towards extremely high aggregated and policy level scales and everything in between. So it gives you a very good handle on what could be going wrong or what could be going right at different micro locations, which can affect the overall system. Now, if we see what kind of data was generated in this project, the first point of the data was that slum boundaries in each city, each slum, let's say there was a boundary, then the households, the boundaries of the houses where people were living, and along with this boundary was related, let's say, I don't think that layer opens. Yeah, the statistical data that that is of that household, and something very important which generally affects, including of heritage, implementation of any kind of interventions, which is the understanding of the land parcels that are in that area, which was here, the cadastral land details. Who owns the land? Is government the owner of the land, or is a private owner the owner of the land? Which houses remain? So once just these, so if you see, there were only 3 kinds of data sets that were needed, which enabled this whole project, extremely complex project, to be implemented across the length and breadth of the state. Because once you start moving upward now from the level of one slum, and you see what was going on, let's say just at the level of one city. So now we have moved up. We were at the level of, let's say, this one slum that we were seeing, and we zoom out and we see that in this one city itself, one second, it's the screen share stalls now and then. Yeah. Oh. Yeah, I think I can't move the window, but I can show you. So let's say when you zoom out, you see this city is dotted. In each of the case of these slum boundaries, you have a detail, and then you have the land parcel. And when you zoom out, this is the same detail that you have at the level of the whole state. And once one has this kind of data set prepared, of course, we had an advantage here because it was the government itself who wanted to do it. And then there was full mandate to collect this information and do. But what it showed was that this is possible to be done. And once it is done, I mean, we know that slums are most vulnerable part of the city. It is generally something that is ignored and forgotten. But by doing this approach, we could enhance the visibility of these obscure locations in the city at a massive level. And then also see how they are positioned with respect to each other, how they are positioned with respect to the road network, other parts, how many are there in different cities. Once we have that full overview, now it would in future become impossible for any government policy to completely ignore a vulnerable settlement or a vulnerable population. So let's say this was, and the learnings that we were having from this project, I was also sharing with Alula because we were always in contact. And simultaneously at that time, I heard from Alula that even in Tigray, attempts are, is my screen share on still? Anyway,
yes,
Alula
yes,
can reply.
Yeah. Yes,
so,
carry on.
So even in Tigray, after the war, a process had, and when I scanned the internet, of course, there were multiple universities and multiple agencies, including also the Bureau of Tourism, together with Heritage for Peace, were creating different data sets of the heritage sites in Ethiopia, with the thing that, of course, if one would have to do something for their preservation and conservation, first basic information has to be collected. And there we discovered that there were some, of course, the difficulty here is that this is a far more difficult circumstance under which to collect this kind of data. And it necessarily has to be voluntary driven and crowdsourced. And it has to be coordinated based on difficult communication between people in the field and people far away in different universities around the world, or also in Mekelle University now. So some of the challenges that we identified in this process that is going on in Tigray for the sake of heritage data gathering, and why and what could be done so that that process itself can build up to a kind of basis for good, proper decision making and planning, not just for heritage, but expanding from heritage can cover, let's say, for the regional development of the whole region. And one aspect was that a lot of photogrammetric data has been. Photogrammetric data is appropriate for individual sites, and it documents the details of the individual sites. But it is, of course, not the appropriate one for studying sets of sites and the surrounding context at a regional scale. Sorry for the spelling mistake there. Now, geospatial data sets that are being collected have the following challenges. First of all, and these are challenges, these are absolutely normal and kind of a necessary phenomena of this kind of community and crowd-based data collection process. And what is important is to see how to resolve their normal shortcomings. So all the data sets that are being collected by different groups, they are partial, of course, because these are continuously and incrementally building data sets.
Yes.
Sorry? Should I continue? Or?
Continue. Yeah. It was Gidai. Can you mute your?
Okay, no problem. I thought that there was a point. So, and and then there is issues. For example, the data sets that are gathered in the field generally, or there are certain data sets which have extensive location data, but they do not have necessarily attribute data. Now here I'm talking about extremely useful data sets which are ready-made, which can be of great help. Let's say the OpenStreetMap data sets. Now OpenStreetMap also, one can say, is relatively partial data set. Now if I check one data set which shows, let's say, places of worship in Tigray, and you see there are certain points in pink pop up, but of course we know that this is a partial data set because it shows kind of whatever was collected. Now, but there is another data set inside the OpenStreetMap collection for corresponding to Tigray, where one sees a kind of, this shows centroids of all possible places of worship that were documented in the case of Tigray. Now here we see is a pretty massive data set and has over 2,000 points. Now many of these points are nameless in a sense because they are not always identified by name. But when we zoom in, it's a pretty fascinating exercise to see where these places are. When one zooms into these places, one often can find that, yep, down there is a certain site. And I will not be able to distinguish which one is Orthodox church, Orthodox monastery, but they are there. And these data sets are, again, incomplete in the sense that they do not contain any detail of attribute, what kind of site it is, when it was constructed, which denomination, nothing. But it gives us a massive geographical location. Now, similarly, other issues are there which become important in this kind of data gathering or documentation exercise, is what would be a standardization process. For example, here you can see that these are names of monasteries and churches as documented by various groups operating in the field. Now, of course, it would be based on how they are writing it, how they're spelling it, because it's collected in the field and given up. Now, on the other hand, on the right-hand side, on this one, we see the names as extracted from this existing OpenStreetMap layer that we were seeing. Now, some of them will match, some of them will not match, but effectively, what we want to do is that all the information, that wonderful information that is being collected in the field by the various crowdsourcing groups, that information can possibly be connected with the geographical data sets that are already available, and thus creating a combined data set for the whole of Tigray. And when we attempted to do it, of course, it's not something that one or two people can actually do, because it's essentially about creating a base layer, a base what can I say, map, okay, to put it simply, where all the field activities that are going on can be integrated over time. And also, we have to find a way of speeding up the process of recording and documentation, because reality on the ground always changes. And heritage in Ethiopia is very much living heritage. I mean, new churches will also get constructed, old churches will get repaired. Some will have historic significance, some will, as Alula was documenting, some will have only religious significance, and some would have a combination of historic and religious significance. And the data sets that we prepare should be able to give us, in the shortest possible time and in a single place, the variety of, or as much variety as possible, of the reality on the ground. And because if we see now, let's say 3 years have gone by since 2022, which is why I mentioned a little bit the importance of the speed, let's say, of the exercise that we had done. Again, we had other advantages, but even crowdsourcing processes can be sped up, because if we do not have, and at the same time, what I saw is that there is no, I saw the report of the Tourism Bureau, which has a list of certain sites. Then other studies have, the Frobenius Institute website has a list of certain sites. Then some other universities have a list of certain sites. But of course, none of them are comprehensive. And it is important that they get integrated. And one of the possible solutions, of course, is that one should preferably, or try to, the advantage of starting with, let's say, this layer that I had shown, which has the largest possible geographical identification of religious and historical religious sites in Tigray as a starting point, and start filling up this database based on the information that comes from the ground, which has huge advantages, because of all the data sets that I have seen, this one is the largest in terms of the coverage of location. And once, now, if we assume that this is either the full data set, which I doubt, but it is definitely closer to the full data set compared to any other data set that I've seen, then taking this one as a starting point saves a lot of work for us later on, because imagine the obverse of this, that a certain people, certain volunteers on the ground are going around and taking GPS locations and also saying what is the condition of a particular site, and then sending it to someone who is compiling them. And then the location, the information they send may or may not contain the locational details. If it contains the locational details, it is unsure whether it is the locational detail of where they were standing and taking a photograph of the site, or of the site itself. So whereas what one needs from the ground is basically the reality of the ground, which one can't get from anywhere else, which means it is a lot of it is what we need to know as to how to update a large data set and fill it with details. Now, when this, and the moment this process begins and this process starts filling up, what begins is a kind of integration of other things. For example, if you see, this is the the network of major roads in Tigray. Now, this is a reality of life, that the more developed a region will become, the more will be the damage it will face from either man-made or natural disaster. It is the law. So, for example, I mean, the more there are highways in Tigray, and of course there will be highways in Tigray now. Highways will be restored now. In an eventuality of another armed conflict, movement of troops would of course be fast. That's what a highway is for. It's for development, but of course troops will also be able to move. And if you see, here is Mekele, and there is this axis that goes from Mekele and then to Axum and then towards northwest. And all of you would know very well that from which axis the forces of Eritrea and the forces of the Ethiopian Defense Forces, and then how even when the TPLF then counterattacked, you will of course be able to see it with respect to the roads. And although not so clear, but you will see a certain concentration of these points along the major axis. So at many points they will be, and also you will see that in the central parts and in the eastern parts a far higher concentration, and less so on the western and northwestern. Now, if one combines that then further with minor roads, then one starts getting, now again, this is so essentially what one gets here is an ability to see, ability to connect a reality at a very individual, at an individual point, at an individual locality. What is the situation around it? What place is it? What lies around? Is it agricultural land? Is it a settlement? Is it a road? And at the same time, try to see where that element is placed in scheme of things, which is essential if we have to link the planning and intervention of a particular site, and thereby be able to devise different kind of strategies, because now we have a good understanding of detail. For example, the sites which are, let's say here, the sites which are within an urban area, like we see these purple dots here now. Now these of course have a coverage also within, or they have an interaction within, let's say, the urban plan of that particular area. So that kind of forms a particular subset of the entity. We go further out and we see these locations here. They're of course far from the city, so they naturally, of course, still fall within, let's say, the Voreda level, but it goes outside the city plan's purview. And same when we go into much higher levels, then we can see that, okay, of course, Axum is a famous historic center. So there are clusters around Axum, and there are clusters here, and there are clusters here. And then there are other settlements which are dotted across the landscape, because in the case of Tigray, the landscape and the vastness of the landscape itself is a tremendous part of the heritage. So, this is these are kind of some of the approaches and things, and very ongoing. And for a while we had left it also, because I was discussing with Alula, and then we went forward a bit, and then we thought that it's better to discuss in a larger audience something like this, because it's not really a conventional approach, and at the same time it can have. So personally, for me, I will never say that this is something very great or this or that, but it is just it seems like adding such an approach to mainstream heritage conservation could could enable it to have a more interdisciplinary, I should say, influence on other factors that affect it, because heritage is affected. I mean, the chance that again very soon there will be a kind of equal threat of kinetic warfare is very low, but down a couple of decades nobody knows what happens. In the meantime, of course, there are other innumerable threats that sites face. You know, the very population disruption, the very internal displacement of population that happened because of whatever happened itself, because heritage is essentially about people, is the interaction of people and the places of their heritage. Now, when people themselves are, their lives themselves are disrupted, then that connection itself gets threatened. And similarly, now when after the end of the war, which again what we were discussing, the same kind of reports that we see of the damage of historical sites, now same reports exist with the government for the damage of hospitals and health centers. Same exists for damage to universities and schools. So the government will, of course, be in a situation where it will have to prioritize, and it would be under tremendous pressure to prioritize that which seems to be of greater immediate need. Let's say restoration of livelihood, restoration of homes, or seeing that people can return to their places and also have a livelihood. Now these, and rebuilding of hospitals, health facilities, basic education infrastructure, these things, if one would have to impress on the government a way in which that they automatically see those things together with the restoration of heritage, that cannot just be done by saying in words. It has to be shown in terms of the actual manner in which these things are integrated. They are connected together in space. And oftentimes, as we have seen, more solutions emerge from that than, let's say, not. Because once, let's say, a government is making a scheme for helping people in a certain city, and then if we already have information exactly about what heritage sites are within the immediate vicinity of that city and what is their condition, then that can be immediately put inside that plan, rather than having to prepare a whole separate plan corresponding to heritage, where substantial places will anyway overlap with the plans that would be made for the cities. This is just a hypothetical scenario, but it's a logical scenario. So,
in
this
5 minutes, let's we will move to discussion.
I will not take
Yes.
those 5 minutes at all, because as I said, this is more thinking aloud certain approaches and things that and some reflections that we had, and then to open to discussion, to see whether there is any validity in something like this, and if so, how we can work together to build it. Well, that's so. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Antarin, for the wonderful presentation. You might as well keep the sharing in case somebody wants to, because we will go towards discussion now. Anyone who wants to, you can raise your hand or open your mic and Professor Wilbert Smith, please carry on.
Okay, thank you. So, Antarin, it's fantastic to see you. And it's also fantastic to see how far you are in your thinking and your work. So congratulations, and much more than congratulations. Really, thank you. This was enlightening. But I have a specific comment. I didn't, which I should.
You're Walbert.
Yes, but I have a concrete question and a concrete remark. A number of people here in the audience also know about it. The German Archaeological Institute had started a so-called heritage map, which cannot be compared at all with this kind of approach, which put together anything known by archaeologists, let's say by the circles of archaeologists cooperating and putting their data into the public in a way that it is understandable. You know what I mean? I mean, there's a lot of
I
archaeological
know.
reports where even it's not clear where it is and where exactly it is. So this by itself is very complex, but the data which are sort of available and are possible to be georeferenced were put together, and there's a sort of preliminary map, heritage map, which was done together with the colleagues from the then ARCCH. Tigray was in war in that time. So this is extremely preliminary. But based on that, because the situation since the war is much better, even if there's still fear of conflict, the idea is to start a second round by the archaeologists. And my suggestion to them is always to my colleagues, we should set up a group of cooperation. Dr. Alula is part of it and part of the discussion. So nothing has been decided, but the Tigray Culture and Tourism Authority is also informed and is interested in it. So the idea would be, do you think it is appropriate? Do you think it's possible to create a framework of cooperation?
Mr. Kabada, can you mute?
Mr. Kabada, yeah.
Yes.
So to cooperate, to start a sort of framework of cooperation where these data and the data of the archaeologists can be put together despite very different cultures, institutional cultures, institutional discipline cultures, and so on. So you see my point. It's a concrete issue, and I would be extremely happy if we find some way of putting things together.
No, I think this is.
May I add something into it?
Yeah. Yes. Very good. Very good.
Please.
You're the right person.
Yes. Please continue.
Thank you very much. I like the presentation and the approach, but there are practical problems with regard to Tigray, as Dr. Wolbert has mentioned. I don't know of the
Mr. Kabada, your audio is not clear. Maybe move a little bit. Mr. Kabada, we cannot hear you.
Maybe some.
Your audio is not, we cannot hear you. There is no audio.
But maybe in the meantime, I can reply to Wolbert, and then we can.
Yes. Mr. Kabada, maybe fix if it's network or earphone issue, and then we'll come back to you. Yeah, please continue.
No, actually, Wolbert, you're there, right? I can't see you.
Yes, I'm here.
No, Wolbert, this is I didn't know about that actually. The endeavor that you mentioned, but it's really, this is what you suggested is exactly what I mean. We have interacted enough in Mekelle, so you know that I can only be in agreement with something like this. And I was discussing also with Alula a lot, and because while there are many potentials, it's also a lot of work, and when it is a lot of work, it is better to get started right away. And like when I showed you that Indian experience. Now, the thing is that it took 6 months to collect that data, but it took about an year or more to clean and organize that data. So in India, we are good at collecting things. Organizing things is a whole different story. And unless it is very well organized and where there is a common basis for different data sets to combine, it remains completely useless. So this is, I think I would be very, very interested. In fact, I was searching a lot, which are the different ones, and individually trying to see how to combine. But then I saw that it would be quite formidable alone. It has to be a collaboration, and so I am definitely all for it. And the sooner we can discuss more, we'll plunge straight in, because it is, and also anything that makes me remember Mekele, or is it? So one of the things I was enjoying so much was just diving into any of these random points and ending up on Google Earth on a distant landscape and feeling very curious that what is this church here, in the middle of fields where there is no name for that one. So it would be really wonderful. That's and of course it is wonderful to see you, Wolbord, and you're always remembered, and I have photographic memory of each of my day in Mekele, as Alula knows. Including, I would also remember my parents here. My parents passed away, but my mother was extremely fond of Mekele. In fact, one of her wishes right before passing was to make one more trip to Mekele. Now, that's something. It didn't happen, but it's also in her memory a little bit. Yeah, that's it, and we can discuss more.
Wonderful. So in line with that one, is the most important thing is, as from our small endeavors, what we all have learned is this thing at the core of it has to be done by local people. If you're not there, it's like you will always be, and that's why with Wolbert we were discussing, and also to continue this discussion back in Mekele, to organize a training workshop for Antarin, so we can have a.
I'm actually local person. I'm kind of local.
Yes.
But partly relocated to temporarily relocated to India. So
yes.
Yeah, you are. So, and this collaboration of local and not local itself is pretty essential. Sorry, Alula, I didn't want to interrupt you.
Yeah. So yeah, I would like also to, in a way, announce that we are planning in the near future using this data set, a training workshop in Mekele University to people from who work in the Bureau of Culture and also within Mekele University. So this collective activity will also get momentum. And until Kabede comes back, there is a question on chat. Do you want me to read it, or you can access it until?
I'm here. I've come back.
Okay. So Kabede will continue, and then you can continue to the chat. Mr. Kabede, please continue.
I'm sorry, there has been a power interruption. That's why I went off. Anyway, he has answered my worry. But Alula, for you and the youngsters who are hearing us, there has to be a mechanism of coordinating all these activities, either through the Bureau or any organization. There has to be a coordinated effort. I know of 7 or 8 projects who are in this registration process, but the outcome is not yet known. So my issue is, who is going to do this coordination? Alula, are you thinking about it or not? That is the only idea that I want to add. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Actually, Alula, before I would just like to thank Kabede for this, because this was exactly the question in my mind also. when I was researching, because I was seeing, and that's what I mentioned in one of the points, that there are now some parallel processes, and I think Kebede raises a very valid ISO, so I support it.
Yes,
strongly.
exactly.
And now
Because
up to you.
this task was, we would say it was started during the conflict, basically on what to do if there is damage, advocacy, and other things. So basically, as we started to collect and as site numbers we start to grow, we have to see like what can be done after a post-conflict. So it's a kind of byproduct of an immediate action that was started during the conflict to save and also to create, when necessary, advocacy, and also to salvage some of the sites if they're affected, and then what to do with the remains. So it's in a way needs coordination, and then I still believe many of the things should be anchored in Bureau of Culture and also the local universities. In the future, if you have museums and archive centers, that could also be a good thing. We know the Wugro Museum is already a very good case study, which is starting to be strengthened. But we have to definitely work with the local institutions, with the universities, and also with the appropriate government bureau. Goitom, would you like to speak, if you can? Because I know Goitom is very active in this kind of things. We are always communicating. He goes to sites and then look at things. He wrote something in the chat. You can go on to the comments in chat, then Antarin. There is, this is Temnit, and thank you.
Yeah, just
Okay, I'll read it for everyone. This is Temnit, and thank you, Antarin, for your informative, always helpful presentation. This was really interesting. My question is, you mentioned the lack of attribute data and incompleteness of the dataset, perhaps for areas like Tigray. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how such issues could be addressed in open source data. Where do you think the main challenges lie, and what can be done either individually or group to help improve the quality and completeness of the data? Antarin, you are mute in case you are speaking.
oh, sorry.
Yeah,
there was some. I think there was some problem with the sound also. I a little bit turned off the video. 1 second. You can hear now?
yes, we can hear you. I was just reading the 10 minutes.
No, I could hear you, but I was not able to. Something in the speaker. But first, I think Goitam asked that. I'm sorry because I used the abbreviation, the POFW. It's just one category in OpenStreetMap data, which it's codified as places of worship. But I didn't mention because I was just saying I was showing them as that category itself, but that's what it means, places of worship, POFW. There is also a link which shows what different categories of OpenStreetMap data are. I can share later on with Alula. As for the Timnit's question, yes, it's very vital, and it's an incremental, and it's a kind of a successive saturation method. There must be a container where incrementally information about the place can be put, and over time, as and when it is getting collected, without the information becoming scattered. So there has to be a common base. And that's why I suggested that it is better to start with the largest available geospatial data set, or one can combine the largest available geolocated data sets and then add the information about different sites on that. So we have a common base, and then over time, more and more that data set can get standardized. And different people who want to, let's say, different government departments or different agencies, which they want to do something in that area, can draw on uh, the same data set. So, for example, if there is a plan of doing road network planning in Mekelle sometime in the future, so that the information that the roads authority draws from already has all information about heritage, location, the connection of that, so that the decision makers would automatically be obliged to take that into at least into consideration, if not to obey. So it is the method is, as I said, the method is to start. It is harder to go from attribute data to geolocated data. It's because of the kind of technique available. It's easier if the data is, let's say you collect a lot of attribute data, but then putting those individual ones with latitude, longitude in it's a harder process. But if the points on the map already exist, it is just about filling up more and more information in the form that is associated in the database that's associated with that. So I hope this one satisfies.
There's one minor question: Is there any chance to develop user-friendly applications that can operate on smartphones using simple GPS?
Actually, yes. Also, I would just quickly say there is one of my thank you.
I didn't finish my question.
Oh,
I don't know if you allow me to interrupt you.
Yes.
That was my question.
Please continue.
I mean, in recent years, you know that in Sudan there was a civil war. So when the army of Al-Burhan decided to retake back Khartoum, there were attempts by civilian vigilante groups. There were attempts of upgrading what was happening in Sudan using Google Map. I think that the name of the program was New Khartoum. So you see what is damaged, what is still intact from your smartphone. So is there any possibility where you can develop a very simple and user-friendly application that can be used in our...
No, definitely, because I mean, when I was working in India, I used it a lot, especially for connecting with people in the field. There are different ones, but there are some already available. One of them is called QField. QField is like an Android version of QGIS. So, and this one I used a lot because the data sets that we were producing, let's say in India at the pan-state scale, were often not reaching the very people on the ground who needed it most. And they were getting access to paper maps, which was not useful. So then we installed QField in their mobile phones. So on the canvas of, let's say, Google Map or Google Earth, they could add their own data in the field along with attribute data, and they could also open in it any other available GIS data set which could be useful for them. So let's say if the data already exists, they want to cross-check something in the field, they can open that and update the attribute data. Or if there is a new feature in the field which they want to add, they can add it straight away on that. And there, I'm quite sure there are also other ones of that. And also there was one which another colleague of mine from Hungary, Professor Titus, who was also there in Mekelle. Actually, I met him in Mekelle, and then he also engaged with us in our work in India. We were also creating a WebGIS application for the Indian project, which also had a mobile thing. So yes, I totally agree, because from a practical point of view, much of the information that would get collected would be collected using Android phones. And therefore, there has to be a good compatibility between whatever format is being used and whatever is the most practical and usable tool that people can use in the field.
To some extent, you can also use My Google Map. My Google Map is also possible for quick locating data. And
I think there are quite a few. There are quite a few already. And then one just has to make a catalog of what is available, who is, and I think there can be diversity in the way people are collecting the information in the field, but as that information gets collected, there has to be a set of rules and standardization which people in the field need not worry about. But those who would be combining the data sets, then they would, so that the people in the field are free to continuously check the validity of what they have sent in the main data set, and also be free to use whatever, because in the field, it's the realities of the field. It may not be possible to go very close to a structure and take its image. It may not be possible to go at the perfect time and do it. So in the field, it should be as free and flexible as possible. There should be no restrictions in the way a person collects the information. Only thing is that those who would be involved in bringing that information together in a common platform must have very good contact with people in the field to understand the full condition in which that data was collected. What were the difficulties? How far was the photograph taken from? What are other issues going on? So that all those, because that metadata is also very vital data. It itself is part of the attribute data. If some heritage site cannot even be accessed by a person on the field, the probability that something really serious can be done about it immediately is also very low. So even those things can be identified, and the more one gets that information, the more diverse one's strategy is. And I have typically seen in my long work with the government that the government generally is often very ready to do many things, but it of course is incapable and reluctant to do things which, given its present constraints, are relatively impossible for it to do. So when the problem is broken down and given in a way where government it's also possible for governments to do, more often than not, I've seen them more eager to do it. So a lot of it depends on the flexibility and creativity, together with an ability to combine the different sources of data in a standard form. Yeah,
okay.
That's my.
Thank you so much. I think we will need to close this one because, of course, as I mentioned, we have already plans to organize a workshop in Mekelle to have an in-depth and hands-on training using these data sets, and also Antarin being there, and we are working on that one. We will shortly announce that one, so we will have more opportunity to have these things in depth, and to get Antarin back to Mekelle as well. But this is, we will share also Antarin's contact if you have questions, and then you can continue interacting with him. So, Antarin, do you have any last words to say?
No. Thank you very much. It was really nice and a great honor actually to give this talk, and very and thanks a lot for all the feedback and all the discussions on the chat on speech. And as Alula said, please feel free, anyone, to reach out, and and hope that we can collaborate on this kind of work in the future. This is community driven and open source, so that's the spirit for that.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Antarin.